Cameras were rolling live. A sound came from the studio. And Julia Roberts' face completely changed. Jimmy Fallon was mid-question. The kind of light, playful question he'd asked 1,000 times before on The Tonight Show. Julia Roberts was answering with her signature charm, that $1,000,000 smile, the laugh that had captivated audiences for decades, the effortless grace of someone completely comfortable in front of cameras. It was a perfect interview. The audience was engaged. The Roots were ready with musical cues. Everything was flowing exactly as it should. And then, from somewhere near the back of the studio, came a sound. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a sound, a child's laugh. High-pitched, spontaneous, pure. The kind of laugh that stands out because it's so genuine, so unself-conscious. Julia stopped talking mid-sentence. Her smile vanished. Her head turned sharply toward the left side of the studio, away from Jimmy, away from the cameras. Her hand rose to her chest. Her eyes went wide. Jimmy noticed immediately. "Julia?" he said, his playful tone gone, replaced by genuine concern. "Are you okay?" Julia didn't answer. She was staring at something in the audience section, her entire body rigid, her expression transforming from Hollywood glamour to raw, unguarded emotion in the span of 3 seconds. The audience fell silent. The Roots stopped their subtle background playing. Questlove's drumsticks froze mid-air. 300 people suddenly uncertain what they were witnessing. Cameras were live when a sound came from the studio, and Julia Roberts' expression changed completely in seconds. Jimmy set down his blue interview cards. He leaned forward, following Julia's gaze toward the audience. "Julia, what's happening?" Julia's hand was still pressed to her chest. Her eyes were filling with tears. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, but the studio microphones caught every word. "That laugh," she said. "I know that laugh." The control room erupted into controlled chaos. Director Dave Diamadi was speaking rapidly into his headset. "Camera 3, find what she's looking at. Camera 2, stay on Julia. Do we go to commercial? Someone tell me what's happening." Producer Gavin Purcell stood behind Dave, watching the monitors intently. "Keep rolling," he said quietly. "Don't cut. Something real is happening." Jimmy stood up from behind his desk. Not the casual standing he did for comedy bits, but urgent, protective. He walked around the desk toward Julia's chair. "Julia, talk to me. What's going on?" Julia pointed with a trembling hand toward the back left section of the studio audience. "Row 7, she whispered. "Seat 12. That little girl. Her laugh." Camera 3 swung toward the audience, zooming in on row 7. The operator scanned across the seats until landing on a small figure. A girl, maybe 8 years old, sitting between 2 adults. She had curly dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing a purple sweater. She was covering her mouth with both hands, looking mortified that her spontaneous laugh had somehow disrupted the show. "Oh my God!" Julia said, standing up from the guest chair so abruptly that it rolled backward. "Oh my God, that's not possible." Jimmy stopped mid-joke. The entire studio froze. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened 19 years earlier. Julia Roberts wasn't always Julia Roberts, global superstar and America's sweetheart. In 2005, she was already famous. Pretty Woman was 15 years behind her. She'd won her Oscar for Erin Brockovich. She was one of the most recognized actresses in the world. But she was also a mother trying to balance an impossible career with raising twins. Her daughter Hazel and son Phineas were born in 2004. Julia had taken time off from filming, trying to be present, trying to give her children a normal childhood despite the cameras and fame and constant attention. One afternoon in Los Angeles, Julia took 3-year-old Hazel to a children's museum. Just the two of them. No nannies, no security, no handlers. Julia wore sunglasses and a baseball cap, hoping to blend in for a few hours. In the museum's music room, Hazel became fascinated with a small xylophone. She was playing random notes, completely absorbed, when another little girl, maybe 4 years old, approached and asked if she could play too. The girl's name was Sophie. She had curly dark hair and bright eyes and a laugh that sounded like wind chimes. She and Hazel played together for 20 minutes while Julia sat on a nearby bench, watching, grateful for this moment of normal childhood interaction. Sophie's mother sat down beside Julia. She was young, mid-20s, with tired eyes and paint-stained hands. An artist, she explained, struggling to make rent. Raising her daughter alone after Sophie's father left when she was a baby. They talked while their daughters played. About motherhood. About fear. About trying to raise good humans in a complicated world. "Your daughter has a beautiful laugh," Julia said, watching Sophie giggle at something Hazel had done. "Thank you," Sophie's mother said. "It's the only thing that keeps me going sometimes. When everything else feels impossible, I hear her laugh and remember why I'm doing this." Julia understood that feeling completely. When it was time to leave, the mothers exchanged phone numbers. "Maybe we could do this again," Sophie's mother said hopefully. "It's hard to find other moms who get it." Julia wanted to say yes. She wanted to explain that she wasn't just another mom at a children's museum, that scheduling playdates would be complicated by security and paparazzi, and the machinery of fame. But something in Sophie's mother's tired, hopeful eyes made her just nod and smile. "I'd like that," Julia said. She never called. Not because she didn't want to, but because life accelerated again. New movie offers. Press tours. The twins getting older, needing more attention. The phone number got lost in a purse that got donated to charity. Sophie and her mother became a sweet memory filed away with thousands of other brief encounters. Until tonight. 19 years later. When a child's laugh rang out in the Tonight Show's studio and Julia Roberts recognized it instantly despite nearly 2 decades of distance. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Julia was standing now, one hand gripping the back of her chair for support, staring at the little girl in row 7 who was trying to sink into her seat, mortified by the attention. "What's your name?" Julia called out, her voice trembling. The little girl looked at her mother, the woman sitting beside her, whose face had gone pale with recognition, and then back at Julia. "Emma," she said quietly. "And your mother?" Julia asked, though she somehow already knew. The woman in the audience stood slowly. She was in her mid-40s now. The tired eyes were still there, but different somehow. Older. Wiser. Still carrying weight but wearing it with more grace. "My name is Sophie Martinez," the woman said, her voice clear despite obvious emotion. "We met once. At a children's museum in Los Angeles. 19 years ago. You were with your daughter Hazel. I was with Emma's older sister. Her name was Sophie too. Named after me." Julia's hand flew to her mouth. "Was?" she whispered. Sophie Martinez nodded, tears streaming down her face. "She died 7 years ago. Leukemia. She was 12 years old." The studio went completely silent. Not a sound. Not a breath. 300 people and millions watching at home bearing witness to grief collision into a talk show interview. "Emma was born 2 years before Sophie died," Sophie Martinez continued, her voice breaking but pushing through. "Sophie, my first daughter. Used to talk about that day at the museum all the time. About playing xylophone with the nice girl whose mommy wore sunglasses inside. She remembered you. She didn't know you were famous. She just remembered you were kind." Julia was crying openly now, makeup running, Hollywood glamour completely stripped away. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry I never called. I wanted to. I thought about you so many times. I lost your number and I—" "You don't need to apologize," Sophie interrupted gently. "I'm not here for an apology. I'm here because when Sophie was dying, When she was in the hospital in her final weeks, she asked me to make her a promise. The cameras were locked on this moment. Jimmy Fallon stood off to the side, tears streaming down his own face, making no attempt to hide them. The Roots had completely stopped playing. Questlove was wiping his eyes. "What promise?" Julia whispered. Behind the scenes, Fallon made a decision that defied every producer's expectation. Sophie Martinez reached into her purse and pulled out something small, a photograph, worn at the edges from being carried for years. She held it up. The image showed two little girls at a xylophone, both smiling, completely absorbed in their play. "I took this that day at the museum," Sophie said. Sophie kept it by her hospital bed. "She made me promise that if I ever had another chance to thank you, I would." She said you gave her mother hope that day. That watching you be a regular mom in a museum made her feel like our life was normal, even though we were struggling. She said that moment mattered. Julia walked off the stage platform. Not hesitantly. Not asking permission. She walked straight into the audience section, pushing past crew members, climbing over seats, until she reached row 7. She knelt in front of Sophie Martinez and Emma. "May I?" Julia asked, gesturing toward the photograph. Sophie handed it to her. Julia looked at it for a long moment. Two little girls who didn't know about cancer or loss or the weight that was coming. Just two children playing music together on an ordinary afternoon. Julia reached up and removed her earrings. They were simple but elegant, the kind of understated jewelry she always wore. She pressed them into Emma's small hands. "These were my mother's," Julia said softly. "She gave them to me before she died. She told me to give them to someone who understood that beautiful moments matter, even when they're brief. Even when they feel ordinary." She looked at Sophie Martinez. "Your sister gave you a beautiful name. And an even more beautiful laugh. Don't ever stop using it." Emma started crying. Sophie Martinez pulled Julia into an embrace that lasted 15 seconds while 300 people watched in reverent silence. But this is the moment no one in the studio, and no one watching at home, ever saw coming. Jimmy Fallon walked into the audience. He climbed over the same seats Julia had climbed over, until he stood beside them. He looked at Sophie Martinez. "What was your daughter's favorite song?" he asked. Sophie looked confused. "What?" "Your first daughter." "Sophie. What was her favorite song?" She loved Somewhere Over the Rainbow. The Israel Kamakawa version. She played it constantly." Jimmy turned back toward the stage and called out to Questlove. "You know it?" Questlove nodded, already reaching for his phone to pull up the chords. "Play it," Jimmy said. "Right now." For Sophie. The Tonight Show Orchestra, one of the finest musical groups in television, began to play Somewhere Over the Rainbow. In that studio. Soft. Gentle. Heartbreakingly beautiful. Julia Roberts stood in the audience, arm around Sophie Martinez, both of them swaying slightly to the music while Emma held her mother's hand and Julia's earrings, tears streaming down her young face. The audience didn't applaud. They just listened. Some cried. Many held hands with the strangers sitting next to them. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second. When the song ended, Jimmy spoke directly to the camera. "We're not going to do the rest of the show tonight," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Some moments are more important than television. This is one of them. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten." The show went to an extended segment about childhood cancer research, with Sophie Martinez sharing her daughter's story. Julia sat beside her the entire time, holding her hand. After the cameras stopped rolling, Julia exchanged phone numbers with Sophie and Emma. This time she called. The next week, in fact. And the week after that. 6 months later, Julia attended Emma's 9th birthday party. She brought Hazel, who was now 22. The two girls who had played xylophone together as toddlers met again, connected by a memory either of them fully remembered but both had been shaped by. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. The photograph from the Children's Museum now sits in Julia's home office. Beside it, a small plaque reads, "For Sophie, who taught us that ordinary moments become extraordinary when we choose to remember them." Jimmy keeps a picture from that night on his desk. Not of the celebrity moment. Of the audience, 300 strangers holding hands with people they'd never met, united by witnessing something real. Emma still has Julia's earrings. She wore them to her high school graduation,